In recent seasons under Pete Carroll, the Seahawks rarely played any of their starters in the preseason. Will that change when they take the field with Mike Macdonald as the coach for the first time on Saturday at SoFi Stadium? We're going to be diving in here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined here on our Thursday episode by my co-host, Connor Benintendi, and a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s out there. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. Whether you're down in Fresno, California, or over in Knoxville, Tennessee, we greatly appreciate each and every one of you. The Seahawks wrapping up their first phase of training camp. We can't say training camp is finished just yet because there's some joint practices coming up in Nashville, but the final practice today that was open to fans, we've got a preseason opener coming up on Saturday at SoFi Stadium. We're going to be discussing what we've learned to this point about the Seattle Seahawks now that we are 3 weeks into this first training camp under Mike Macdonald. And then we'll be chatting with rising undrafted rookie running back George Holani out of Boise State. I had a chance to chat with him at the VMAC in our latest training camp one-on-one. This episode brought your way by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedInNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedInNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Now for your lead story here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. In recent years, Pete Carroll had been pretty hesitant to play any of his starters in the preseason. We were accustomed to seeing the vast majority of those guys from the first snap in each exhibition game sporting a ball cap with their uniforms. That trend is going to change a little bit, at least based on what Mike Macdonald has said the past couple times that he has spoken with Seattle media. And it makes sense, Connor, because you've got new schemes on both sides of the ball. You're trying to figure out your roster. Really difficult to do that without real game reps. Pete Carroll had a lot of intel on a lot of the players that he had in his roster. Mike Macdonald needs to see what these guys are made out of in a real game situation. With that being said, he hasn't been specific about which players will or will not play on Saturday against the Chargers, with one lone exception. Is one that I agree with. Geno Smith not starting, not expected to play against the Los Angeles Chargers. Look, Geno is a seasoned vet, and at training camp, he has looked fantastic running Ryan Grubb's offense. Obviously missed those 4 practices, but he looked really good this week. There's no reason to put your starting quarterback, your clear starting quarterback, there's no reason to put him in harm's way in the first preseason game. And in fact, I would even be hesitant to put him on the field at all in these 3 games just because I expect that he's going to be ready for week 1 as a seasoned vet. But other positions might be a little bit different.
Yeah, I agree with you, Corbin. And like I was telling you right before the show, I'm a proponent for playing starters in the preseason, but the one spot that I will make an exception for is the starting quarterback, especially considering Geno has had some injury troubles here in training camp. We don't want to see him go out there and aggravate anything that's going to make him not ready for week 1, whatever it might be. But we've also seen him be productive in training camp. We can assume that's going to carry over to week 1. In terms of the defense, it seems like that's where Mike Macdonald is saying, I want to see what this group has in a game situation. Let's throw them out there. I don't know if we're going to see all the defensive starters, as you alluded to, Corbin. I think you might have Reek Woolen, Devin Witherspoon, maybe even Leonard Williams. Who knows, just to try to keep some of those veteran guys fresh. But overall, I think that Mike Macdonald wants to see what he has in this defense early on.
Yeah, I think the defensive side of the football is going to be really a curiosity going into this game because Macdonald today was saying that several of the starters are going to play. Now, we don't know how many snaps. Could that just be one series? Is that going to be a couple series? Is it just going to be a handful of snaps? And we don't know what that is going to look like until we actually get to the game on Saturday night. But as you were saying, with a guy like Leonard Williams, I don't think Leonard Williams is going to get much value getting any run in these preseason games. Jarran Reed. Now, certainly Byron Murphy, your first-round pick. Byron Murphy needs NFL game reps, and he made that very clear today. Mike Macdonald did that. He's going to play a lot, as he should. You need your rookies to get their snaps. So Byron Murphy is going to be playing. Maybe guys like Boye Mafe and Derek Hall. I don't expect Uchenna Nwosu to play much, if any, in this game. Tyrell Dodson, he's learning this defense. Jerome Baker's out right now with a hamstring injury, but I think Tyrell Dodson probably is going to get a little bit of run in this game. And maybe guys like Rayshon Jenkins and Kayvon Wallace, who are playing in this defense for the first time. Even Julian Love is playing in this defense for the first time. So I think it's possible that you could see 5, 6, maybe even 7 starters get some action in this game. But it does sound like on the offensive side of the football, again, Mike Macdonald didn't want to elaborate on this, but it sounds like there's going to be some other starters on that side of the ball that are not going to play. I would speculate it's guys like Tyler Lockett, who has not been doing much practice anyway. It was supposedly to rest, but it seems like there's got to be some minor injury that he's dealing with. DK Metcalf maybe is a possibility to not play. I don't think either of the top running backs are going to get into there. That is another position to keep them in bubble wrap until we get to week 1. Ken Walker, the third, and Zach Charbonnet are ready to go. But I think for players like right guard Anthony Bradford, for example, he has started 10 games in the NFL, but he's still a pretty right law player. I think getting him some snaps, Oluwatimi, until Connor Williams is here next week. Who knows where that's heading, but give Oluwatimi plenty of reps up there. I think that even you could make a case for Charles Cross to play a series or two just because he's adjusting to this new offense. I would think those are the guys that are going to be suiting up in this game. I expect to see Jake Bobo out there. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba will play some in this game. But those are the kind of players that I would anticipate that we're going to see out there. And then it's going to be the other positions, players like George Holani, who we're going to hear from later here on the podcast. Those are the players that are going to be getting some reps of the first team in this game, with guys like Ken Walker III and Zach Charbonnet at bubble wrap for this one.
Yeah, I think you want to see how some of these tighter positions look where you don't have – where the depth is not certain, right? Like, I mean, you've been talking about these last couple of days, George Holani pushing Kenny McIntosh for this third running back spot. I'm sure that Mike Macdonald and Ryan Grubb want to see how Kenny McIntosh and George Holani are going to compete in a preseason game, how they're going to look in an actual game against another team, not in practice. The tight ends are another one that I'm intrigued by. Because you look at that unofficial depth chart, and Tyler Mabry was pretty high up there, especially after being mostly a practice squad guy, and obviously unofficial depth chart. Take it with a grain of salt. But I'm curious where Jack Westover, Tyler Mabry, Brady Russell, how these guys look in a game situation. That's more what you're looking to get out of a preseason game like this, more so than you're trying to see, are any of these depth guys pushing Charles Cross for a roster spot, or, what do we have at right tackle, whatever it might be. We know that those positions are solid. I'm very intrigued by the running back situation in particular. I want most of our guys to sit in the preseason here. And, I'm excited to see Jake Bobo, particularly. We've talked about Bobo on the show as well a lot recently. I want to see him get out there, kind of fill maybe sort of a pseudo DK Metcalf role in the preseason. It's going to be fun overall, but we don't want to see anybody get hurt, both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. It's going to be a fun competition, and I'm just obviously from the sort of, as you called it, I think, Corbin, the Royal Rumble that happened not today but yesterday. These guys need to get out there and hit somebody. I'm sure that some of these starters are going to be a little disappointed that they're not able to get out there and hit somebody. But overall, it's going to be something that is going to be crucial to this team and seeing who's going to make up the rest of the depth.
I'm glad you mentioned the tight end position, because we're obviously not going to see Noah Fant out there. He was out for a couple of days this week. He did practice today in the walkthrough session, but they're not going to be throwing him out there. But behind him, I think Pharaoh Brown's going to play some snaps in this game. A.J. Barner, again, the rookies, they need all the snaps they can get. Jack Westover, Brady Russell's having an outstanding camp. This is a chance for him to build on his chance to get on the roster. Tyler Mabry there as well. And so I expect most of the players at that position are going to be suiting up. And then, you're going to get a chance to see McLennan Curtis, I expect, is going to be the starter at right tackle, not George Fant. They're going to keep George Fant protected. He's had like 3 or 4 veteran rest days. So those are the kind of guys you want to see. Hey, can we see a player like McLennan Curtis that's looked good in training camp? Is it going to carry over when he's playing against other competition? And so that's really the goal here in this game. And I've always felt like the first preseason game, isn't really necessarily the right game if there is one to play a bunch of your starters. I think the second preseason game makes most sense. And then the third one, you can take your foot off the pedal because, hey, we want to be healthy for week 1, which is coming up. So really the second preseason game when they're playing the Titans after those joint practices, that's going to be the one that I'm curious to see which one of those guys. And maybe they won't go that route because they've already gotten all those reps against the Titans on the practice field. But I'm curious to see how that's going to play out next week. For now, we'll just have to wait and see who is going to suit up and actually play for the Seahawks when they face the Chargers on Saturday in Los Angeles. Coming up next, we're going to break down what we've learned to this point. We've had 14 training camp practices. The first phase of training camp is over. What have we learned about this football team, the new coaching staff? What have we learned about the way things operate under this new coaching staff? We're going to have a lot of fun with that. That'll be coming up next here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Now that I'm back in the saddle as a site manager, LinkedIn Jobs is my go-to to post writing jobs to land top candidates. They make the process easy and seamless. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, and it makes the process so easy. So easy, in fact, that you can get a candidate within 24 hours. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate in just 1 day. LinkedIn Jobs knows the small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resource to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, it's quick, and it's easy. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined for today's show by my co-host, Connor Benintendi. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are listening. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. For your second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get your daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Connor, we are now 14 practices into training camp, and at least from an open practice standpoint, the Seahawks have wrapped up training camp. Today was the last practice where fans were in attendance. They were starting to dismantle this stuff in front of the berm. So those practices are now in the books. They will be in Tennessee to face the Titans with a couple of joint practices next Wednesday and Thursday, the day of the preseason game on Saturday. So a lot of the hay is already in the barn. Obviously, the preseason games are going to have more value for some players than others. There's still some practices we got to get through, but this is providing a pretty good scope, at least right now, of what we expect to see from this team and what we've learned to this point. And I know on the offensive side of the football that there's plenty of things that have been revealed as part of Ryan Grubb's offense here in these first 3+ weeks. Yeah, and that's one of the bigger changes, aside from obviously implementing a whole new defensive scheme, bringing in this defensive guru in Mike Macdonald. The offense is a mystery still of sorts, especially with the fact that obviously reporters at camp aren't able to share much in terms of team sessions and everything else. A lot of us haven't seen what this offense is really going to look like. We know there's going to be more motion. We know there's going to be more eye candy, as multiple players have said. And I think that to some degree, that's really refreshing in the sense that we didn't see a ton of that, during Pete Carroll and the offensive coordinators he had, especially not with Shane Waldron. So to bring in this new regime and see the first game that is going to happen coming up on Saturday, a lot of people are going to be getting their first look at this team. And that's an exciting proposition for a lot of people, but also just with training camp in general, they're slowly building up to this point, and that's going to be putting all of these reps into one big, sort of culmination whenever it comes to Saturday. And in terms of the offense in general, this training camp has been huge. We've seen a lot of we've heard a lot of hype around particularly Jackson Smith and Jigba in terms of how big of a leap he's going to make in year 2. We see a lot about DK Metcalf and whether DK Metcalf could have a career year with Ryan Grubb.
in terms of what we've learned just from training camp in particular, as somebody who has not been there, is that this offense is going to be an explosive offense. We know that's going to happen, but we know it's also going to be very quarterback friendly. It's going to make it easier for Geno Smith. And I'm excited to see what Geno can do in this system. And we've been hearing all the Geno hype as training camp has gone on, just that he's been really good, especially when he's been on the field. And I think that that's going to be crucial to have a quarterback that you trust in a system like this where the deep pass is emphasized, but also you're creating situations for Geno where he has an outlet, whereas maybe in Shane Waldron's offense, he didn't have those consistent outlets, and that's why you saw some of those forced plays. So I think that one particular thing that we've learned from Ryan Grubb's scheme is that this is going to be a system made for Geno Smith's skill set and for a lot of the players on this offense skill set. We've heard it time and time again. Multiple players have said it, that Ryan Grubb is scheming for the players in the offense and utilizing their strengths particularly, rather than trying to get them to mold to the scheme, right? And I think that's going to be something that we did not see last year with Shane Waldron as he tried to get those players to play within his scheme.
What we have learned, or what I've learned in this case, and I've been at almost every training camp practice, what I've learned is that all this talk about complexity on defense is legit. Because let's face it, a lot of times when we are in these training camps, of course, players are going to talk about how great their system is and all the pre-snap changes and the communication. Look, this hype is legitimate, though. This defense getting the chance to watch how it is operated here in these first 3+ weeks, and you just see the way offensive players react at times. You think you're going to see one thing and you see something else. And everybody blitzes. I feel like every guy on this roster is going to get an opportunity at some point to try to go after the quarterback. There's pressure from every level. You see sim pressures. Defensive line, you better be able to play everywhere because they move everybody everywhere up front. So all of those complexities and those illusions that you saw from Mike Macdonald's defense in Baltimore, that is very much carried over to what we are seeing in Seattle. And I think the other thing that I've learned here is that this is not going to be a Pete Carroll defense in the sense where you would see two starting quarterbacks, then you get your cornerbacks, you get your nickel, you've got your two safeties, you've got your two linebackers or three linebackers, and the personnel groups aren't going to change much about who's going to be on the field in terms of starters. It is going to be different with this defense. You are going to see nickel sets in games where Trey Brown is on the outside with Reek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon's inside. If Witherspoon slides outside, here comes Artie Burns inside. You're going to see different personnel groupings. You're going to see 3 and 4 safety sets at times when they are in nickel and dime, and they might even go to dollar where they've got 8 defensive backs out there. On the defensive line, you're going to see Leonard Williams and Jaron Reed in a 2-point stance sometimes. You are going to see Boye Mafe and Derek Hall lining up, shading the A gap. And we were seeing some of those things in OTAs. That is not a fallacy, so to speak. All of these little wrinkles, I cannot wait to actually see what it looks like in a real game situation. And we're not going to see all of those things. It's preseason. It's going to be vanilla on Saturday. You're only going to see a handful of things. We're going to wait till week 1 to really start unrolling some of these complexities. But the fact is that those pre-snap changes, the communication, the emphasis on communication, all the different moving parts in that defense, all of that hype is very true. That is what we have seen on the practice field at this point.
Yeah, and I do want to emphasize what you said of week 1 preseason being very vanilla, and that's obviously you don't have all the pieces you expect to be playing regularly in the regular season playing in this game. So as a result, you don't have the certain little bits of the scheme that are dialed up, say, for one particular player that are going to be showing in this. Also, there's just different parts of the defense that are still going to probably be installed after, or, during the preseason, heading into the regular season. So don't get your expectations too high of what we're obviously going to see, but it's still going to be that basic scheme of what Mike Macdonald is dialing up along with Adam Durde below him. So, and, one of the things that I've learned, Corbin, and you've talked about this over the past couple of weeks, is just that you expect this football team to be more physical. And I think that based on yesterday from training camp, this is going to be a physical football team. These guys have some fire in them. This is the most we've seen since the early 2010s, whenever Pete Carroll was building that Legion of Boom defense. I'm not saying this is going to be the Legion of Boom defense, because that would be a poor comparison. We don't need to relive. We don't need to try and move that tag to another team. But this is what you want to see out of your defense and out of your football team in general. Obviously, as you guys said, I believe it was on yesterday's show, just that these fights happen at camps all the time in football. And we hadn't seen this from the Seahawks. And then next thing you know, the Seahawks are allowing over 2,300 rushing yards. And that just all starts with physicality in practice. How much are you going to be able to line up across from the guy in front of you and punch him in the mouth, so to speak? Because you have to do that to your teammates in training camp.
They've taken that literal here. We've got popping on Bobo, all kinds of crazy stuff. DK Metcalf swinging his helmet like he's Myles Garrett. I mean, we got all kinds of crazy stuff going on.
And you see the photo of Jake Bobo signing autographs with blood on his jersey, and you're just like, all right, this is
a different team.
It's a different team. It's a different team. And I think that that's so important, because whenever you're trying to establish, there's clearly a new identity here. These guys don't feel like, and this is not to bash Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll was my childhood in terms of following this football team. But they had to find their own identity with Mike Macdonald coming in. And Mike Macdonald has clearly emphasized physicality, being their own team. The ghosts are gone in that regard. This is going to be a physical team, and that's what I'm most excited about for Saturday, is just to see if they're going to go punch somebody else in the mouth rather than each other.
Well, hopefully not literally in a game situation,
yes.
This also goes to the offense, because, look, I've got a lot of question marks about this offensive line. That has not changed with what we have seen in training camp. But one thing that I have seen an offensive line that is going to be looking to move people off the ball. They're going to look to get to the second level and pancake people. You have seen that physicality really start to manifest itself with the offensive line. And I think Anthony Bradford's been one of the catalysts of that. Like, there's a reason Christian Haynes has not gotten first-team reps. Anthony Bradford's physicality and his ability to move people off the line of scrimmage, like Mike Macdonald in particular, wants dudes like that can really knock people off the ball. And Bradford's a decent athlete, a pretty good athlete, actually, for a player of his size, if you look at his testing numbers at the combine last year. So you're seeing that physical presence. Laken Tomlinson has brought that to this offensive line. Charles Cross is playing with more physicality by a wide margin than we saw in his first two seasons. So I want to see that on the field. But I think that is clearly something that we've learned at this point, that this team has kind of taken on the personality of the new coaching staff here, that we're not going to hold back. We're going to be physical. Has it gotten to extracurriculars? Absolutely. But I talked about this yesterday. I do not think that it's a bad thing. In fact, I think if you're having training camp practices and there are not fights breaking out, something is going wrong. You are not doing things right. People should be getting under teammates, under their skin, and really starting to wreak havoc with having to hit the same guy over and over again. That should be a normal part of this process. Speaking of physicality, when we come back, one of the guys that's really been a catalyst for the pads popping here in these practices, he wasn't a Seahawk last year. He went undrafted, but George Holani, he has been one of those catalysts that's really fired up the offense in particular to get these physical practices rolling. I had a chance to catch up with George Holani. We'll have that one-on-one interview coming up here in a moment on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by our friends over at Game Time. You shouldn't have to think about skipping a car payment when you buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast, easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Coming up on September 1st, my wife and I will be jamming out to Metallica at Lumen Field and managed to get our hands on $200 tickets to see one of the most respected metal bands in the game, thanks to Game Time. We were able to cross that show off the bucket list and didn't have to break the bank to do so. Game Time has deals on the tickets right up to the day of the event, and the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price to write your own memories. If you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined on today's show by my co-host, Connor Benintendi. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. And thanks for tuning in and making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The Seahawks entered training camp with two clear studs at running back atop the depth chart. They had Ken Walker III, the projected starter, Zach Charbonnet, a 2023 second-round pick who flashed last year in his rookie season. There was going to be no drama there with who the top two running backs were going to be. But Kenny McIntosh, after not playing much at all last season, no offensive snaps in 3 games, dressed the former 7th-round pick. He was expected to have some competition for that third-down running back job, and that has turned out to be more than the case here. In fact, he may have more than he can handle, and that's because George Holani, the undrafted rookie out of Boise State, he has come in playing with his pads, ready to roll. And Connor, this is a guy who, if not for injuries, probably would have been drafted early on day 3 instead of going undrafted. He had really good production in college, and Ryan Grubb called Ken Walker III a three-tool player. I think that in many ways, George Holani is the same without the athletic punch that Ken Walker III is going to bring to the table, but still, he is a good runner. He can catch and he can pass protect. He can handle all 3 of those. And so he has thrust himself into this competition as maybe now the favorite to win this third down running back job.
Yeah, and the pass protection aspect is huge that you talked about there, Corbin. I mean, that's something we've heard that Kenny is struggling with, right? Kenny McIntosh is struggling with pass protection, and that's Ryan Grubb might not be too high on that particular aspect there in terms of Kenny McIntosh's game. But, without having seen George Holani in training camp, regrettably, this is a guy who had a ton of production at Boise State. I mean, he's 5th in program history in rushing yards, had over 3,500 rushing yards. This is a guy who has been in the lead back role. And like you said, the injuries are what kind of held him back. I was pretty high on Kenny McIntosh last year coming out of I'm now forgetting what. Georgia, thank you. I knew it was Georgia or Alabama. It was one of the 2 red schools. But I was pretty high on him, and I thought he was going to be a lot of fun. Just his ability to make guys miss and his elusiveness and speed was kind of captivating, especially as a running back enthusiast. But to see Holani pushing him for this spot, and we know that Zach Charbonnet's pass protection has been a big reason why we might expect to see him a little bit more this year, aside from obviously the fact he's a great running back and through and through. But I am very curious to see how this goes. And like I said earlier, this is one of the competitions that I'm really, really excited to see on Saturday.
And, ranking 5th in Boise State history in rushing yards, that's actually a pretty good accomplishment because that is one of the running back U's in college football when you've had guys like Doug Martin and Jay Ajayi and some of the other players that have come out of there to be in the top 5 all-time in rushing yards there. That's a significant accomplishment. Now he's looking to carve out his own role in the NFL following some of those former stars that ended up having really good careers in the NFL. I had a chance to chat with George Holani at the VMAC, and from everything from what he learned at Boise State, how that prepared him to getting to work with Ken Walker III and company. Take a listen. I'm going to lead off with that because, Boise State's kicked out a lot of NFL players, but running back seems to be a position, whether it's Doug Martin, Jay Ajayi, just seems like they just keep kicking out quality backs. What does that program do? And I know Ashton as well next year.
Right.
What does that program do to prepare guys for playing at the next level at that position? What do they do so well to prepare guys?
I mean, Boise State is a real blue-collar program. We're a lot about mentality. So, being able to run the ball, that's our mentality. And it starts off that, we take huge pride in the run game and then being able to just go off of that and then, transition to the pass game. But we've been really good in the run game these past couple of years. A lot of great running backs, as you said. It's just exciting just to see where, Boise State is going to take that to the next level.
You get to visit with the Seahawks during the pre-draft process. What was that like, and how easy did that make the decision when you weren't drafted to say, hey, this is where I want to be. This is the team I want to play for?
I mean, I just, first, I never been, to Seattle, the Seahawks facility. So when I first came, I loved it. I loved everything about it. It's a great environment, great fan base, great culture all around. So I just wanted to be a part of that. And then it's a blessing for me to be here. So.
What's it been like getting to learn Ryan Grubb's offense, and how does it compare to some of the systems that you've played in previously?
I mean, it's a real explosive offense. That's what I'll say. Just seeing this offense, being a part of it. I played against this offense last year.
I was going to ask you about that. You got to watch from the sideline.
I got to watch from the sideline, and yeah, there was a lot of explosive plays. So it's exciting.
From a running back standpoint, as far as what they're asking you to do, whether it's running routes or the pass protection stuff, how different has that been for you, or even just the concepts you're doing in the run game compared to your offenses at Boise State?
Honestly, it's been pretty similar. I've been a part of a lot of different, spread offenses, under center. I have 5 offensive coordinators in college, so, it's been awesome to be a part of it. But, whatever the coaches need us to do, as players, we're going to buy in and do that.
What's it been like playing for Kennedy Palomalu? You can talk about a decorated running back coach, a couple of rushing title winners. Seems like everywhere he goes has great success.
Right.
And do you think he's a very methodical coach when it comes to how he handles practices? But what's it been like getting to play for him?
I would say he's really intense. He's an intense coach, and everything he does, he's really intentional as well. He's able to coach the little details, make sure we're dialed up in the run games, being able to block every run play we have, and then making sure we're on point with communication. That's a big thing for him with the players and him. So I think just being able to go out there and compete, and then him just dialing into the little things, that's where we're going to take our game to the next level.
Everybody gets excited when the pads come out, but it just seems like ever since that first padded practice, there's just been a light switch that's come on for you. How important is that physicality aspect to your success running the football and pass protection, even as a receiver? How critical is that physical aspect in terms of you playing at your best?
I mean, it's really important. You see it everywhere. The most physical team wins. Whoever can control that line of scrimmage, that's usually the team who wins all the games. So being able to have pads on finally and just go out there and compete, it's awesome. Especially like, OTAs and stuff, we're out there just shorts and jerseys. So being out there and getting a realistic look and competing and, having different situations, understanding that, and then just mastering that is pretty awesome.
Get to play in your first NFL game on Saturday, get to go down and play the Chargers. What are your thoughts on what you're going to be feeling getting on the field for the first time, and what are you looking to show Ryan Grubb and the coaching staff building off what looks like it's been a pretty successful camp for you so far?
I mean, for me right now, it's just taking it one day at a time, just finding that routine, especially coming up for game day, being able to understand, what I'm going to do, and just taking it all in, honestly. I think it's a great opportunity, once in a lifetime opportunity. So not everybody gets to do this. So I'm just be able to just go out there and just take it all in.
Last question here. You got to play with Ken Walker III and Zach Charbonnet, 2 guys now that have at least 1 year of experience under their belt. What's one thing that you have been able to learn here this first couple weeks from those guys that you think is going to help you advance your game here at the next level?
I would say just being able to know the playbook, being able to be aware and being available. That's the main thing as a running back. That's the main thing as an NFL player. You want to be on the field every time because the best ability is availability. So just knowing that, and then just for me, just coming in as a rookie, always having those guys, those vets, being able to just if you need help, ask. So, I've been using them as a resource, and they've been helping out a lot with the running back room.
As always, you can follow me on X and Threads at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Connor at Benintendi. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up tomorrow, I'll be joined by Nick Lee, and we will be previewing Seattle's preseason opener, what we're going to be looking for on offense, defense, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about special teams because that might be the biggest storyline heading into this first preseason game. Make sure that you're listening in and enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Go Hawks.